I'd like to call to order the City of Saugatuck's City Council Workshop Meeting for Wednesday, August 7th. If the clerk could please call the roll.
Anderson. Baldwin.
Here.
Dean.
Here.
Gardner.
Here.
Muncy.
Here.
Stanton.
Here.
White.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Do I need a motion to excuse Councilmember Anderson? Do I for the workshop?
I mean, traditionally you have.
Yes. Okay, can I have a motion to excuse Councilmember Anderson?
Motion to excuse Councilmember Anderson from August 7th workshop.
I'll second.
All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Okay, any agenda changes? I do have an addition of a guest speaker. So if I could have a motion to add a guest speaker this evening, Anthony Carlotto. He will be speaking about a life jacket loaner program at Oval Beach. If I could add that to item 4B.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
motion to add is item 4B, guest speaker, Mr. Anthony Carlotto.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Great. All right. Before we move on to our guest speakers, I do want to acknowledge the passing of Allegan County Commissioner Dean Kapinga. I know it was a real shock to all of us to get that news. And, our thoughts are with his family right now. And I hope to have more information by Monday's meeting about any funeral services. But I did want to acknowledge that. And again, our thoughts are with his family. And it was just a real shock to hear that news. So,
Mayor.
yes.
I believe the obituary said there was a visitation on Friday and a service on Saturday.
Okay.
I hope I've got that right.
Okay.
Somebody could maybe check it if they can get online, but I'm just wondering if anyone from the council attends the service, if they could express condolences from the whole Saugatuck City Council. I'm out of town that weekend, so.
Okay.
I would support sending flowers.
Yeah,
Some kind of notion, definitely.
do something.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I was going to ask, it'd be appropriate for council to send something to the,
Absolutely.
he served as county commissioner since 2007. So
Yeah.
Dean was a good guy.
All
It
right.
was incredible to reach out to all of our cities when he served our district, and almost 20 years he served as commissioner. And he did a great job of keeping us all updated, coming to meetings, and just a great family man too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Big
I'm
loss.
just looking at it online just to make sure I didn't misspeak. Yes, visitation will take place Friday, August 9th from 4:30 to 7:30 at Central Wesleyan Church. I believe this is in Hamilton. Funeral will take place Saturday, August 10th at 10 a.m. at Central Wesleyan Church with a 1-hour visitation prior to services starting at 9 a.m. So
Okay.
that's the obituary for Commissioner Kapinga. So yeah, I support what the other council members have said. If
Absolutely.
we could show our condolences in some way, I'd be grateful.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right. All right. We will move on now to our guest speaker this evening, Brooks Massing. If you are in the audience, Brooks, if you can come on up. And if you just want to introduce yourself and where you live, and then you can just go through your proposal, and we just welcome you tonight and thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Brooks Massing, and I'm a Boy Scout working towards my Eagle Scout right now. Eagle Scout is the highest rank in the Boy Scouts. And one of those requirements is a community-based project that, has to help the whole community. And my topic is to install a bike rack.
If you want to just cue me to the next
Yeah.
room during your
Yeah.
presentation.
So yeah, the goal of my project is to install one bike rack around the base of Mount Baldhead. So yeah, that would maybe qualify. Why I chose Mount Baldhead is because I frequently go there and I notice a lot of space that's open, and yeah. My plan, as I stated, I want to install a bike rack around surface in Mount Baldhead. For the installation, my Boy Scout troop can install the bike rack itself with supervision, but we would need a city employee to pour a concrete pad. I decided that would be the wisest course of action, just so it can't be easily moved, and it would last longer. My inspiration for this project started when my previous troop leader's wife mentioned the idea during one of our campouts. I thought it was a great idea because it benefits the community. And as you can see in these photos here, I would say it's needed in the area. Bike racks. I initially began looking for bike racks on Amazon. When speaking with the previous city manager about the designs, we came up with some new possible ideas that would fit the city better, mainly involving durability, lifespan, and some of the bike racks in towns, like keeping the same design almost. After doing further research, I found Uline, which offers multiple industrial grade bike racks. Uline bike racks. Uline is a business that sells industrial and bulk items. I chose their website because they offer all three of the most common bike rack designs. They are a known source, so their chance of their products being higher quality is better. And then those are the three type of bike racks that they offer below. Circular bike rack. The circular bike rack would be the last choice in my opinion, because it offers the least amount of bike storage, and it can only hold 2 bikes, and it only weighed 32 pounds, which I don't think would be a very stable bike rack to install. Below there is a little bit of details, not really too important right now. The grid and wave bike racks. The grid bike rack, which is on the left there, takes up the most space. However, it has the most bike storage per dollar. If there's a large enough space in the area, I'd say you'd be getting the best deal. However, if there's not enough space to accommodate the grid bike rack, I would say the wave bike rack would be the best because it has the second highest capacity and it kind of fits the theme that they already have down there on Mount Bald. Costs and details. The grid bike rack price is $650. It can hold 18 bikes. The photo that is on there is not the bike rack that has 18 bikes. That was the only photo I could find on their website. And the weight is 112 pounds. The wave bike rack is $151. Max bikes it can hold is 7, and the weight would be 80 pounds. Circular bike rack is $280. Max bikes it can hold is 2, and the weight would be 32 pounds. And then all of these bike racks have galvanized steel as their main material, and then they all are coated with rust protection. And then these are just some photos of possible locations that I went down there and saw. And benefits of adding bike rack to the Saugatuck area as follows: adds more locations, people can safely store their bikes, allows businesses to expand their seat capacity if they have it in that proximity, offers different modes of transportation for those who are willing to use their bikes, and it advertises the town to a different category of tourists. People could come from the trails that connect to Holland and safely store their bikes. And what would I need from the city? Approval for the location that I decided on, to decide which bike rack would be in their best interest, funding for the said bike rack, and then the last one there is from my previous presentation, so it's not really important here.
Okay, so at this point, does anybody have any questions?
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
First, I just want to thank Mr. Massing came and presented actually to the PPW, and we brought this along, and I want to commend you on your initiative, and I think it's a wonderful project. We thought it worthy to bring to council, and I think that it's just a great idea, and I'm absolutely in favor of it.
Good. Go ahead.
Of course, supporting anything the Boy Scouts would like to contribute to our community. And of course, we do need a bike rack. That's without question. My only question was, would we have to, if we're putting a concrete pad, do we have to do another study on the ground, like for the bathrooms, for the reasons that I'm afraid to say?
Yeah.
I can't think of the right word.
Right.
I know.
Ryan, you would know.
For archaeological study.
Yeah, so that was a requirement of AT&T is
The bathroom.
because of there's federal
There's federal dollars involved.
federal dollars involved, and and federal regulations with the FCC and their type of using cellular antennas and that sort of thing. So we don't necessarily have those requirements here with the bathroom project in the upper platform. We did reach out to the tribal consulting party, so at least let them know as good partners that we were working on these projects to see if they had any feedback for us or comments. So far, we have not heard from them on that.
Okay.
We can certainly let them know about this as well. We either kind of have a situation where, as we install the bathrooms, we could, if it's, a rack that's going to go potentially nearby, we could probably do some concrete work at the same time. Otherwise, as part of our normal kind of sidewalk replacements and other concrete work around town, Scott Herbert would work to have the pad poured.
And then also, I didn't see a timeline here. When, if it was approved, what's the timeline are you thinking about? Of course, I know things take time and ordering things, but is there a general timeline?
Yeah, so I know Brooks is ready to get moving. I think it's really gonna depend on either when the bathrooms are ready to be installed. If we're gonna do it near there, let's just, pour everything all at once, or if not, if it's gonna be in like a separate location, then whenever Scott's gonna have the concrete contractor in town. So that's typically, later September into October is my understanding from Scott.
So, by winter.
Correct.
Oh, good.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, thank you. Thank you for being here today. It's a great presentation. And as an avid cyclist, I have some thoughts. I would propose using the first bike rack that seems to be the most usable for most bicyclists in terms of usability as well as getting enough bikes on there. That would be my suggestion. Number two is in terms of location, I would keep it. I'm just thinking if there's a way to maybe put a pad off of the patio or off of the pavilion enclosure, pour a pad towards there to move it away from the bathrooms and the way to the steps. We want to try to keep the congestion away from there. It takes a few minutes to unlock a bike and lock a bike up and get kids' helmets off and all that kind of stuff. So I would suggest moving it off towards the side. So if you're standing looking at the stairs, move it to the right.
Yeah.
Somewhere in there would make sense to me because then there's quite a bit of space there. And if it could be something you could, maybe build right off of the pad that's already existing for the pavilion, might be a natural place to put it. And the brack would, I think, maybe even you could get it underneath the slope of the roof. Having gotten my bike off of a rack in pouring rain, it's much easier to do it when you don't have rain on you. I don't know if that's possible, but those would be my suggestions. Great idea. I'm fully supportive of this.
All right, Scott.
Yeah, I think it's a great presentation. Thank you for that. And I also have a preference for the grid, the heavier and the one that holds more bikes. I was initially, like Councilman Muncy, concerned that your project might be delayed with the need to do a study to put anything in the ground. We've had that issue as a city in terms of excavations in that area. And I was kind of intrigued with the sort of fact that the grid one is like about 112 pounds and, it's a fairly low theft environment here in Saugatuck when it comes to bikes. So to me, initially, I thought, well, perhaps it could just be freestanding and we didn't have to pour concrete. But it sounds like the manager has kind of addressed that it shouldn't be a problem to put a pad in. But, we do have a fair amount of work kind of ongoing around Mount Baldhead, and the ability to maybe adjust the location of the rack might have some advantages. I don't know if your project is contingent on doing a bit of a construction project or not. I would be amazed if, 112-pound bike rack got stolen.
If
from
if
that
I
one.
may.
Go ahead,
When
Helen.
our DPW superintendent was here for the PPW meeting.
Yeah.
He indicated that it should be installed on a
Okay.
on a concrete slab.
So Scott would like it
Yeah.
to be more of a permanent installation. Okay, that's fine. Yeah. I think that rack is fine then. And, wherever when you work with the DPW team to find a location, I'm supportive.
I agree with Scott and with Russ as well. I think that would be our best bet was to get that bigger rack. I see lots of bikes tied up wherever they can be around there when they drive by. Yeah, and then to your concern, Russ, I do think that would be a little bit too congested if we put this next to the bathrooms. There's a lot of coming and going there. There's maintenance and things like that. I do like the idea of it being on the other side near the pavilion.
Okay. So Ryan, what are the next steps for Mr. Massing as far as this project? Because I know that is also part of his project is to know the process and how this works.
Yeah, so, it seems like we've had pretty positive feedback today, so I would anticipate having this on your agenda for Monday to vote on it, and then kind of with the, approval being contingent upon working out the final details with really our DPW superintendent.
Okay. All right. If there's nothing else, thank you so much for
Thank you.
being here and we appreciate it.
Can't wait to use it.
All right, we will move on then to our next guest speaker. If we could have Anthony Carlotto come on up to the podium. Great. And Anthony, if you could just introduce yourself and where you live.
I'm Anthony. I live in Saugatuck. I'm working for my Eagle Scout project as well. The last thing I need to do, very excited to do this. I'd like to thank you all for the opportunity to be here and present to you all today. And I'm just gonna read the first page word for word here. So I'll just.
It's great. Thank you.
All right, so I'd like to propose a life jacket learner station at Oval Beach. The objective of the station is to establish the station at Oval Beach to promote water safety and prevent drowning incidents by providing free access to life jackets for the community. Just some background, drowning is the leading cause of accidental deaths worldwide, with a significant number of incidents occurring due to lack of access to life jackets. I think a life jacket learner station would address this issue by making life-saving equipment readily available to individuals engaging in water activities. And then just the location, it's gonna be right next to the concession stand. Very visible spot. Visitors will see it. And then you turn to the next page, just see some examples of it. Just a general idea how it's gonna look like. It's almost gonna look exactly like this. We're gonna have life jackets right there. Just pick them up. Hope is that they return it by the end of the day. It's all going to be US Coast Guard approved. It's gonna be multiple sizes, 4 sizes. It's gonna. And then just the plan for it, coordinate with local authorities, which is what I'm doing now. And then this will just kind of go hand in hand with the promotion and outreach, but once this gets approved, start a fundraiser. I believe that'll take about a month, so end fundraising in September, finish and working on the project in October. Maintenance, Oval Beach, they'll have to regularly inspect and replace life jackets. There's a group of people who do that, that they can just go, hey, we've had some life jackets been accidentally taken, and they'll replace them free of charge. Budget. So if you turn to the next page, you'll just see an outline of like what I think each material is going to about cost. So yeah, estimating about, what is it, like $800, $850 on this project in total, but so in conclusion, I think a life jacket learner station would not only provide a critical safety measure, but also demonstrate our commitment to protecting the lives of our community members. By implementing this initiative, we aim to make water activities safer and more enjoyable for everyone. I guess the benefits of this station would obviously be to like reduce the risk of drowning incidents. You know, it's Michigan. Enhance community safety and well-being, and foster a culture of responsible water recreation. There's a sign on the station that, you know, gives, informs them like proper life jacket size, what to do, how to put them on. And yeah, that's all I have to say. The last few pages are just Eagle Scout information, but otherwise that's all I have.
Great. Does anyone have any questions?
Madam Mayor,
This is, yeah, this is a great idea. Of course, we all like safety. I do have a couple questions that might be,
Yeah.
you know, brought up.
Yeah.
First of all, long-term maintenance. So this would be something that would be ongoing for years to come.
Mhm.
And then also you'd mentioned something about life jackets. If one was stolen, this company that sells these life jackets, they'll replace stolen life jackets for free?
There is a group of people who are part of this program that will take care of that, yes.
Okay, so we don't have to think about replacing those if any get stolen.
No.
Oh, that's interesting. And then also, I had an interesting question too. How about liability? If I were to get a life jacket and maybe it was default, maybe there was a strap on it that was loose or something like that, would the city be liable if we're providing that kind of feature for folks?
Necessarily, and so think about maybe adding a disclaimer to the sign design, but I mean, generally speaking. Be thinking those two things.
Okay.
Yeah, not a question I'm looking at specifically, but off and up. I don't know.
Just in these days where things like that happen, I'd like to ask those questions. Okay, thank you.
Ellen?
Yeah, I just wanted to, once again, thank, Mr. Carlotta for being here. He also presented at PPW and we thought that the project was worthy and we're excited to bring it here. This is, not a unique, item in a public beach. These are offered, at many. I mean, he had me at the itemized, listing of materials, which I thought was really, took a lot of initiative and, very thorough. Yeah, I wanted to thank him for bringing that to us. I think that it's a wonderful addition. I mean, Lake Michigan especially, everyone knows that there's those riptides. And if anyone is feeling a little bit ambivalent at all, to be able to grab a life jacket, actually superintendent made a comment too, that a lot of times when people are traveling with their kids, you might not bring a life jacket. We have a lot of tourists and possibly didn't have room in the truck for a life jacket. So I think it's a wonderful, worthy project. Excited to bring it to council. And I would like more information on whatever fundraiser you have so that we might contribute. Anyone who's willing to do so, I would be happy to contribute. Thank you.
Yeah, and I just think if we get more information on the program, on the replacement program, we would love some more information on that. But I think it sounds like a great program and it's a great project for you.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, I see that this one's sponsored by Bronson.
Yeah.
Out of South Haven. Seems like honestly seems like a great opportunity for a sponsorship. If there's a local visitor that wants to, I mean, the cost to entry on that is pretty low and the positive exposure on that's pretty high.
It's a great
Could be an
idea.
attractive sponsorship. You can get someone to put their name out there.
Hudsonville Ice Cream.
Maybe an ice cream place.
An ice cream place. The local.
Summertime ice cream.
Yeah,
Start swimming.
Well, if there's no other question,
Yeah,
oh,
just-
go ahead.
Yeah, go
Russ.
ahead.
Yeah,
You go
thank
first.
you. Again, congratulations on your project. Thank you for presenting this to us. The liability question is a good one. I had the same question. I wonder if there's any, I can't see it from the image that you've shared with us, but I wonder if there's a statement on there about liability. I don't know if that's even something that's been thought. This is a pretty mature process. I did some investigation after seeing this and it's a thing. There's a lot of beaches that do it. So I'm sure that's been thought through, but it's a great question that Councilmember Muncy asked. I also would be interested, and we've been kind of talking about it, is understanding what the long-term liability, not liability, but the long-term cost of the city would be from a DPW standpoint for maintenance, equipment replacement and things like that. It sounds like that's all been thought out, but would love to see if there's any expected ongoing maintenance and expenses for our DPW department. They've already got a full plate, as Ryan knows. Just want to better understand that going forward too, because I imagine this will get used and will be really beneficial to our community.
So, yeah, and just to speak to a little bit to that, so we Scott and I met Noah, our beach manager, and Anthony. We all met out on the site a month ago, and kind of took a look. Initially, Anthony was thinking something that would be more like a mobile station, and that was something that Scott had a little more concerns with from like moving it around and that type of a maintenance. I want to say burden, but extra work that would need to be done to move it to certain places while they're, raking sand and that sort of thing. So, Scott's belief is that really it's probably best to install this near the concession area, where there's already a kind of a swing set, play set where families are kind of maybe, changing into the bathing suits and grabbing food, kind of a permanent location being there. He felt that less maintenance would be required there. And then, certainly I trust our Eagle Scout here will have good sturdy materials and that this will last a long time eventually. Yeah, I mean, this would be something that we probably would have some maintenance on or need to replace some things. So there would be some costs eventually. So.
Yeah, so another question. So at night, during the season, the vests are always going to be available for people to use night and day, right? Is that right? So our staff will not have the responsibility to pull them at the end of the day and put them out the next morning?
Correct. That would be, our staff would have to say, okay, like this size or maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
Some go away over time, then we would need to, communicate with somebody to replace them,
Okay.
but.
And then over the winter, will there be someone taking responsibility for removing them from the rack and storing them for the winter until the springtime?
Yeah, I'm sure that we would certainly do
Something else
that.
we need
Yeah.
to be thinking about, so. Okay,
Scott,
thank
did you
you.
have something?
Just great presentation, very supportive of it. Looks like you've already done your homework in terms of South Haven's model. If you're interested, you might want to check out the Great Lakes Surf Rescue Project. They're online. They may have some best practices they'd want to share with you or be happy to share with you. And they also may have some ideas on funding as well. So great project. Looking forward to supporting it.
Okay, and again, Ryan, if you want to go over next steps as far as this project?
Yeah, like I said, I think it seems like we have a good positive response today. I think we have enough detail to at least move forward with your agenda on Monday with approval contingent upon kind of the final details being worked out with staff and signage being, being approved and that sort of thing.
Okay, all right.
One last question. Is the group that you're partnering with on this, are they furnishing the printed sign? I don't see that in the itemized list, and I know those can get
Those aren't cheap.
kind of expensive and
Yeah.
like the design and whatnot of that. is
Yeah,
gonna be-
they're helping with the sign,
Okay,
correct?
sweet. Okay, that's great. Just wanted to make sure.
Okay, anything else? All right, Mr. Carlotto, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for this project. All right, we are moving on to public comment on agenda items only. If there's anyone in the audience who wishes to come up to the podium. Okay, we will move on to online. Is there anyone with their hand raised? I see someone in the top left corner. Jamie, if you could help that person out, and if you could introduce yourself, unmute yourself, and where you live.
Good afternoon. I'm Seth Arthur. I'm an attorney at Varnum LLP, and I represent Saugatuck Neighbors, a nonprofit organization of people that own and manage short-term rentals in the city. First, we're concerned that at least one council person who voted in favor of the short-term rental cap has a conflict of interest. For any person in the R2 district, they have a financial interest, especially those who are considering moving. City Charter Section 4.9E states, quote, "No member of the council shall vote on any issue or matter in which he or a member of his family shall have a proprietary or financial interest, or as a result may receive or gain a financial benefit." The mayor lives in R2. R2 is exempted from the short-term rental caps. As this council knows, living in a district without caps will allow her to have a rental certificate, meaning her house will be more valuable. She can do in R2 what R1 people cannot: have a short-term rental and sell her property as having that option, thus increasing its value. Under information and belief, we understand the mayor may have recently considered selling her R2 property. Therefore, the mayor, quote, "may receive or gain a financial benefit from the short-term rental cap decision," and thus there is a conflict of interest under the city charter. Second, it's our understanding that Councilmember White has withdrawn his short-term rental application, and the conflict was removed, at least at a prior meeting, and thus he should be allowed to vote on the capping issue. However, given the mayor's conflict, there must be a revote on whether any ordinance should be adopted with short-term rental caps. In addition, staff's agenda report for today admits, quote, "As currently drafted, the zoning and police powers ordinance amendments for short-term rental capping are substantially identical," end quote. Thus, the police power ordinance you're enacting is a de facto zoning ordinance that has not gone through the Zoning Enabling Act's procedures. Again, the police powers ordinance, it's substantially identical to the zoning ordinance. Obviously, citizens can referend a zoning ordinance, not a police power ordinance. So the city should not be trying to work around the procedures of the Zoning Enabling Act by adopting a de facto zoning ordinance. It's improper and it's against Michigan law. So we'd again emphasize that a revote on the short-term rental cap ordinance should occur, and the city needs to follow the procedures of the Zoning Act. Thank you.
All right, anyone else online who wishes to speak? I don't see a hand raised. Jamie? Okay, then we will move on. We are closing public comments. So we're moving on to discussion items. 6A, Wi-Fi option for Oval Beach. It is on page 15 in your packet. Ryan?
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor. I know this is no surprise to the council, and I think a number of community members that have expressed concern that there's a lack of cell coverage out at the beach. That's something that we, as a city have been working on diligently with AT&T and bringing cellular antenna to the Mount Baldhead radome. In fact, just today I had another meeting with them and our engineer and their engineers to kind of discuss some conduit related options to avoid some mooring in the dune to help with some of the tribal consulting party concerns. So that project is still in the works, and AT&T continues to work diligently on trying to obtain those SHPO approvals and take into consideration the tribal consulting party concerns. So that's been a long process. It could still be a long process, and so an opportunity kind of arose where we were looking at Wi-Fi related options for downtown. In fact, we're talking with some business owners in town that are actually utilizing or exploring utilizing Starlink, which is a newer internet related option that uses satellites. It's kind of it's used around the world, both in urban and rural environments. The U.S. government used it. It's been used in ways in times of war and Ukraine, and so it's a product that has some reliability, and we think it's worth thought it was worth exploring. And so Lisa Mize and I at the CVB have been having some discussions along these lines, and met recently with some representatives from Metro Wireless on they're a licensed Starlink provider to kind of discuss what options we had for Wi-Fi both downtown and at Oval Beach. And so solving Wi-Fi for the beach is a little bit more straightforward than it is for downtown, given the number of buildings and trees and things that we have on this side of town. So they've put together a proposal based on viewing the site and talking through what the needs are. Obviously, for us, first and foremost, safety is a concern. With a Wi-Fi option, folks would be able to make Wi-Fi related or calls over a Wi-Fi. We'd be able to prioritize our staff and their needs out there with having Wi-Fi at the beach. And then there's just kind of other general benefits related to folks being able to communicate via messages and social media, and as well beach that they're enjoying their visit. So there's a lot of benefits to that as well. So we have the folks from Metro Wireless here on the line. I believe Tyler's on.
Yep. Hey, Ryan, how are you?
All right. So if it's all right, Madam Mayor, I'll turn over to Tyler to kind of walk through their presentation, and they're happy to answer any and all questions that you have and go into discussion.
Yes, Tyler, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having us. Am I able to share my screen by chance? It's gonna be the same. I just thought I might run through the couple pages I have.
Might have to make them a co-host, Jamie.
Let's see. I think I'm able to do it. Let's take a quick look. Can you guys see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Awesome. So Ryan, appreciate the introduction. So we are Metro Wireless, and to Ryan's point, we come today with a proposal not for the downtown city, but for Oval Beach, and doing an outdoor managed Wi-Fi solution, given that there's frankly no cellular connectivity out there in Oval Beach. So Ryan and I were in discussions, and we looked at this as kind of a two-phase effort, one solving the Oval Beach scenario, and then taking a look at potentially adding outdoor Wi-Fi coverage in the downtown area. Just for a quick context on who we are, we're Metro Wireless. I'm the owner and operator here. We've been around over a decade now, and our claim to fame is that we make wireless work, and we specialize in outdoor wireless. We do things like outdoor events, golf courses, RV parks, campgrounds, that kind of thing. So, bringing wireless and Wi-Fi coverage to areas that, traditionally have trouble in those kinds of environments is something that we take a lot of pride in. And so, we're backed by some great customer satisfaction scores, averaging a 9.6 out of 10, 4.9 out of 5 on Google. And what's interesting is, most of our business comes from outside the state of Michigan. We're probably based in Detroit, but we've kind of gotten a national reputation for this. And so just a good couple context points for you guys on, outdoor wireless. We service marinas and yacht clubs in Michigan, a couple examples here that Ryan has in the proposal, but, we're very familiar with these kind of outdoor, water kind of environments and things like that. But at any rate, so Ryan and I and Lisa took a site walk back in the week of July 4th. And there's a few things that we learned during our site walk. Number one is Ryan has already articulated, there is no cellular connectivity at the beach, right? Whether you're on Verizon, T-Mobile, or AT&T, there just is little to no cellular connectivity out there. And so not only does that leave visitors kind of stranded, but it also leaves the lifeguard staff without reliable communications to reach back to folks during an emergency. Anecdotally, I was taking a truck ride with Scott, I think, from your Department of Works. And he explained to me that when there's an emergency, like one lifeguard has to radio another lifeguard further to town or the ticket booth, who then makes the phone call. And so it's just kind of a mess there. We also learned that there's really no wireline ISP option. So there's not a traditional, say, Comcast coax line going out to Oval Beach that could provide you internet access. And more tertiarily, but there are some old POTS lines, which are old copper phone lines that the carriers are starting to discontinue. So even if there is currently a phone line out there, it may eventually get taken out. So what Ryan and I had discussed previous to today was we proposed kind of a managed Wi-Fi solution that would provide blanket Wi-Fi coverage to Oval Beach, such that both visitors as well as the lifeguard staff and city employees, staff, etc., could access a Starlink based internet solution to make Wi-Fi calls for emergencies, to send messages, FaceTime, listen to music, whatever people want to use the internet for. We can support that via the Starlink connectivity. Again, we would want to prioritize, obviously, that emergency communications and the staff and lifeguard network gets prioritized, which we have the ability to do via the Wi-Fi access points and the software that they utilize. But that's the solution that we propose. Of course, you can get very slick with it with monetization and fancy slash pages with the city of Saugatuck. But at the end of the day, what we're proposing is providing a true blanket outdoor Wi-Fi solution that is going to cover the entire Oval Beach. The way that we will accomplish this is installing 2 outdoor, I'm going to call them like a super Wi-Fi access point, more intended for like the Comerica Parks of the world, rather than say, at home trying to solve like for your backyard. And so via installing 2 Wi-Fi access points, one on the ticket booth at Oval Beach and one on the concession stand, we are able to provide that blanket Wi-Fi coverage that you see in the left-hand photo there. Counterintuitively, the photo shows a lot of yellow. Yellow is actually a very good thing. In this case, it's not necessarily it's going to give you bad signal. It's actually a really well-covered area just based on the way the heat map software works. So just a note there. We did look at adding multiple APs beyond the first 2. However, we decided that we didn't need it based on the predicted coverage that we would have from our heat mapping software. And frankly, there aren't any other areas with electricity such as light poles in the parking lot and things like that. So we selected the right hardware for the job such that we only had to install in 2 locations. On the right-hand side photo, just more of a quick technical note, we would use one Starlink dish that would support both Wi-Fi access points. The reason that we have a connection between the concession stand and the ticket booth is it's more cost effective for the city of Saugatuck to only have to have one Starlink service versus one at each location. So there's what we call a wireless bridge that connects the 2 locations, and then we're able to provide internet access to both Wi-Fi access points. I won't get into too much of the technical detail unless it's of interest or we have questions, but as Ryan mentioned, we are an official Starlink partner. The type of Starlink that we offer is a commercial only offering. It's not the same Starlink dish or service that you would get at home for your residential use. We sell and provide and manage services that are commercial grade. They get faster speeds, better uptime and reliability, lower latency. These are the types of things that you use in emergency and first responder type situations rather than the residential tier of service. A single connection can provide access probably for, as Ryan said, 2,000 users. We would speed limit each user so that no one's hogging the connection and being a bandwidth hog at the beach. And then as Ryan also mentioned, we would prioritize access for the staff as well. So here are a couple pictures of like what the technology looks like. Cambium is a very high quality enterprise grade Wi-Fi manufacturer for outdoor wireless gear. And that's what we would use. And then Starlink, of course, is providing that connection to the internet itself. So 2 components. One is providing internet to the beach. The other is, dispersing the Wi-Fi, out to the users. Also, as discussed, we see a one-time installation cost of $15,000. That covers all the equipment, the provisioning of the equipment, the install labor, all of that piece, the Starlink, dish itself as well. We do forecast that in today's 8.7, but this typically doesn't take more than 30 days once we get a deposit to handle this. And then the Starlink connection itself, as well as our management of the Wi-Fi network, is about $700 a month. And then our team based here in Detroit manages that connection. So if we ever see it goes offline, if there's any issues with the Wi-Fi, our systems automatically notify us, and then we pick up the phone and call whoever the contact is, whether it's Department of Works or whomever, and say, hey, we see an issue. Can you do you guys lose power at the beach? What have you? And that's how we would go about managing that connection and troubleshooting it. So we don't just install it and walk away. No, we're with you for the life of the system to make sure that there aren't any issues, post installation. So that's a bit of a note on the pricing. The last thing I'll mention before we get into, any Q&A, I wanted to provide a sense of what this would look like on top of the concession stand and ticket booth. And this is probably the closest mock-up I would have available. This is kind of a solution we use for temporary events. These Wi-Fi APs, I'll call them the super Wi-Fi access points. These are probably about 2 feet tall. They might be paintable with non-reflective paint. But we would put one of these on each, the concession stand and the ticket booth. Here you see 2 in the photo, but we only need 1 per mounting point. And then the Starlink dish itself is probably about, 2.5 feet by 1.5 feet. And that we would put on the concession stand as well. So that's kind of the 2 pieces there. So it's not a complete eyesore, but yes, there is some equipment going on the outside of the concession stand as well as the ticket booth there. I know I ran through that a little quickly, so I want to open it up to any questions you guys might have about, the solution as we see it, how we're going to go about it, et cetera.
All right, Tyler, thank you. I open it up to questions.
I'll start.
All right.
Ryan, you said you met with AT&T today. Have you had a chance to share this item with them that we're working on this? I'm just curious about interoperability and any reaction they may have on that with what they're planning or hoping to do over at the radar station.
Yeah, I haven't shared this with them. I think it's, they're working on providing a cellular service,
Correct.
not a,
Yeah.
so I don't see this, just kind of a different product.
Yeah,
so,
I'm not
yep.
enough of an expert to know if there's any bandwidth issues.
Tyler would definitely be the expert. Tyler, if AT&T, Tyler's aware that we're working with AT&T to provide cellular service through antenna on the radome.
Yeah.
Would that cause any conflict with any of this equipment, I guess?
No, it would not, because again, Wi-Fi is different from a cellular frequency. So there's no, say, interference in that. And Starlink, AT&T is not using Starlink as a backhaul connection to their cellular network. And I applaud the efforts to get AT&T, on that radome. It's a great piece. It's the best asset you guys have in town to get, more cellular antennas going, which you obviously need. But the problem is that's, the AT&T solution only helps AT&T users, right? So it doesn't help the T-Mobiles and the Verizon users out there. And so, whether it's for Oval Beach or for the citywide Wi-Fi project that, might be phase 2 of this, I think that's why Wi-Fi is kind of more of a uniform, helps everyone out, versus AT&T obviously can only do, provide service to their users.
I guess given just the number of years we've been working with AT&T, I would not want them to be surprised by this. I'm very much in favor of it. Safety is the top priority at Oval Beach. This would enhance our safety. Tyler, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm assuming in addition to supporting staff's ability to have connectivity, this would also enable us to have a couple webcams looking at both the beach and the parking lot. Is that correct?
Yep, exactly. And we could work out if they're ready for installation at the time that we install our service, we're happy to, mount those for you. If it's later, we would just roll a truck and, take care of that then as well.
Yeah, so I'm very supportive of this because I think it would be a safety enhancement. People could, make emergency calls via WhatsApp, via FaceTime, the number of options there in terms of letting the public, have access to emergency responders much quicker than we've had in the past. I guess I just would like to know how this interfaces. Russ has said this many times and he's correct. Having an integrated telecommunications plan would be ideal. But in some cases, we are having to build this as we go along because it's a critical need that's been identified by the community for years now. So we are sort of in some ways building it as we go along, but anything we can do to make sure it's integrated, different vendors aren't stepping on each other's toes, or being influenced on, the viability or desirability of partnering with us, I think it's not unfortunately, it's just a conversation that needs to be had. Those are my thoughts.
Anyone else? Go ahead, Russ.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I'll lean into my question man mode. Thank you very much for the presentation. I enjoyed reading through this. A couple questions. One is Ryan, I'm assuming this has been vetted through an independent expert with telecommunications around this strategy. I mean, I'm familiar with Starlink, they've been in the news over the past few years with their support over in Ukraine and the technology is pretty stable. But I'm just wondering from a solution standpoint, has this been vetted by someone outside of through our engineers or someone else that could speak to it from an outside perspective, looking in saying, yeah, this is a viable solution for the problem you're trying to solve?
No.
Okay. And as Council Member Dean said, this is ultimately about public safety and there's some alternatives to this. The ultimate one being some type of system or process that we could put in place that would cover all carriers and provide wireless communication to everybody, regardless of carrier. There are other alternatives that I've discussed with different people out there, and one of them is the POTS line. So the POTS line, there's a 911 phone on the side of the concession stand, which actually works. I tested it out several months ago. You pick it up and you're right into 911 in Allegan. There's also I believe there's a telephone, for lack of a better term, at the ticket station. So one of the ideas that has been proposed, I know other communities have done it as well, is to run a line down the beach, right along the asphalt, and put in 2 to 3, kind of what you see at college campuses or, and there's different styles of them, but basically it would be a phone you pick up. You don't even have to have wireless and it immediately dials you into 911. So ultimately, which would I think would be far less expensive. This is about a $26,000 investment. Thank you to the CVB for agreeing to, if we go forward, this is picking up the $15,000 installation cost. That's a $26,000 investment for the city over 3 years. I have some questions about that too in a moment, but I'd like to see us look at some alternatives to this so we can make an informed decision on the best solution to the problem. I think that leveraging the POTS lines, even though I know it says in the presentation POTS lines are going away, I don't think any of the major carriers are proposing that going away anytime immediately. What they could probably do is raise the cost to the point it's going to become unaffordable for people to actually have them. But that's a current technology. It's stable. It's there. I think we could easily run some lines down the beach that we could put in some very, usable. We can put life rings on them. We can make them safety stations to actually allow people to just grab a phone. They don't even have to worry, because a lot of people are at the beach without a phone too. So that's another, I'd love to see some more alternatives to this to make an informed decision. I love this being brought to the table. The other thing is, in the event that a solution, another higher level solution comes into play, I see it was a 36-month commitment. How would we exit out of this in the event we had a different solution to replace this in the interim? Are we committed to a 3-year? And that might be more of a contracting question at this point that we haven't really addressed. And how does this fit into our overall telecom strategy? I love the solution. I just would really like to see us begin to focus, as Councilmember Dean said, I really love to have a telecom strategy for the community, because we have fiber optics in town. We have other services available to us that I just don't think we're strategically looking at this. I'd be happy to lead up a council committee for a brief time to actually analyze this and put together a telecom strategy that we can plan to.
May I have a chance to respond to some of those?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
So what's your name, excuse me?
Russ Gardner.
Right. Thank you, Russ. So your point is well taken. I think, I guess to sum it up, it's like, can you let the, perfect be the enemy of good? And yes, installing those like blue light emergency phones would be ideal. And like, again, is POTS going to go end of life at end of year? No, but to your point, they'll get prohibitively expensive over time. And if and when that line does get cut, how quickly can you get a technician out there to replace it? So I agree, like a tri-carrier solution that boosts cellular connectivity throughout the town is ideal. And people come to us, like clients, like those rural golf courses come to us to say, hey, can you get Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile to install towers? And it requires individual negotiation with the carriers, and it extends well into the 6 figures, almost 7 figures, to get those types of things done over multiple years. And so I welcome, just from my experience doing this for a little while, I applaud the effort to be more holistic, but I think what you'll run into is, you know, a lot more than say 26,000 over a 3-year life cycle. And then your deployment timeline is going to really slip. And so am I saying that this is the perfect solution? No, but I do think that this is a solution that will get you through that period of time for you guys to evaluate something deeper. And that's kind of where I guess our perspective would fall.
Madam Mayor?
Go ahead, Helen.
If I may, I do agree with the vendor and with the city staff. $600 a month over 3 years, I think is not a lot to pay for added safety, not hardwired the way that we have it. We've got generously, the CVB is going to help us install some of the hardware. So it's not just, it is a safety issue first and foremost, but beyond that, people be able to place a call, check in for lunch, take a photo, upload it. I mean, people don't take phones to the beach now because they know it's like a rock. You might as well bring a rock to the beach if you're going to Oval Beach. So I would say that while there, again, there's no perfect solution, this is a really good stopgap measure, which will allow us the time. Right now, we've been without anything at Oval Beach in the 2 years since we lost somebody there. And I just think that we'd be remiss not to take up on something that the CVB is going to be generous, donating the infrastructure, and it's going to cost us $600 a month for 3 years. I think as a city, that's money very well spent.
I like the idea of having also just the commercial advantages of, to your point, of people seeing the beach, having access to webcams of the beach. To me, 3 years could almost be a pilot. I mean, we're not committed beyond 3 years, and sometimes you do need to pilot things to see how effective they are, to see how popular they are with our visitors.
And where we end up with AT&T or anybody else, anything
Yeah,
else?
I do want to make sure though that, because the AT&T has been going on for years, and I know they've run into, some issues that they're working through. And I just I think we owe them the courtesy of saying that, we're still talking to you about AT&T, about Wi-Fi downtown, but, this is a chance to pilot something that would solve, hopefully, or enhance safety on the beach. I think, just getting a reaction also from the first responder community, if what their thoughts would be on this. Generally, I'm very positive about this. I would like to go forward. I think the cost is appropriate given the potential benefits of it. I mean, just for people to be able to see, what the parking lot looks like, to see what the waves look like. I mean, I find myself looking at the Holland State Park webcam all the time just to get a sense of what's going on, near us. So I'm very much in favor, and I do think this could be very much like a pilot. Even 36 months is not forever. So I'm generally in support. I just wouldn't want to surprise anybody, because we've been working telecommunications hard for years now. But I am generally supportive.
Okay.
If we get cameras, I know I'm gonna have to probably get a new bathing suit. When I wear
You can
now.
blur that out.
Could be a revenue stream.
I gotta say,
Revenue stream.
when we first,
Grace OnlyFans page.
all kidding aside, when we first started talking about this, and I really like the idea of having landlines, and I kind of like the idea that nobody could get internet on the beach, because it's nice to step away from it, and it's nice that people are enjoying the environment rather down in their phones. However, the more that I've looked at this, the more I understanding that CVB is going to give us 15,000 towards it. So it's really,
I should probably clear.
at first I thought it was going to be a 40.
You should have clarified
I
a
just
few
want to
things.
say, yeah, I mean, CVB hasn't quite, like, the board has not voted on this yet. So
Oh,
this
I'm
is something,
sorry.
yeah, so I do want to clarify that. I
Because
think,
that would be a deciding factor, I think.
I agree,
because,
and yeah, so
26,000 for a 3-year trial run, while we maybe do have what Russ, you talked about, is having, during those 3 years, within the next year or so, it'd be nice to have a plan of action for technology. Where are we going? So we have a better roadmap, and to give it a try as well. And then the more I'm thinking about it during the meeting here, I'm thinking, when I'm at the beach, I'm thinking about where's, after I leave here, what restaurant am I going to? What stores do I want to check out? So I think there's an advantage to our business community as well, because they're already vacationing here, and they're probably thinking about, okay, where are we going for dinner? What are we going to do afterwards? So I think that could be beneficial in a small way, I guess. I'm very positive about it. I'm especially positive if the CVB wants to give us some money. But I think it's something that's much needed, communication out there for sure. The idea of hardwire though, I still kind of do like that idea because it's something that's planted in the ground. You know, there's times when Wi-Fi is out for everyone. I know Starlink is a reliable thing, but even with this program, I would still like to see a hardwired phone down there, at least at the concession stand for emergencies. I think it would be good to have as a backup.
Yeah, and Councilmember Muncy, to my point, I'm supportive of this too. I am on board with a solution to this, but I'd love to see some alternatives so I can make a more informed decision about what the best solution is for the problem that we're trying to solve, and that's public safety at the beach. As much as and again, it gets back to strategy here, right? Is our strategy to provide complete Wi-Fi coverage for the beach for visitors, for, looking at the webcams or looking at their whatever? Maybe, but ultimately today, right now, it's because we had an emergency 2 years ago where 911 wasn't easily reached because of cell signals. And that is the primary goal, is to make that happen. This is part of that, but I'd love to see some alternatives because, there are other ways to do this. And the one way that I mentioned has been done in a lot of other communities up and down the Lake Michigan shore, who many communities have the same problem we have. And that's one solution. I'd love to see it.
So if I could ask a couple of questions, timing, how soon could this be installed, Tyler, as far as, if this is something that gets approved, how soon could this be up and running?
Yeah, we can install this within, say 30 days of, signature deposit. What's nice about wireless in this project, it's pretty lightweight, which is pretty cool.
Okay. Question for Ryan, as far as the installation of this equipment, what kind of approvals do we need as far as putting this on top of the concession stand and on top of the ticket booth?
Yeah, and so, we're definitely gonna want to check with Michigan Township Services, see if there's any like mechanical, electrical permits that they may require, from that perspective. And I'm sure Tyler can speak to, what kind of permits maybe other communities have had him pull. Other than that, it's public space and your space to kind of make a determination on that piece.
Okay. My next question, Tyler, durability. Obviously, the elements are quite brutal, especially in the winter. Obviously not a lot of people on the beach in the winter, but as far as the equipment is concerned, does it stay up during the winter? Do you take it down? And then if anything happens to it, obviously, is that your responsibility to come out and help fix anything that might happen to it?
Yeah, great question. So the equipment is outdoor rated. It's rated for winters. We run a lot of similar equipment here in the Metro Detroit area, both the Cambium gear as well as the Starlink. Again, the Starlink dish is like the commercial grade dish, so they know it's subject to extreme conditions. I actually think it has a self-heating mechanism to melt snow and ice if it notices that it's cold or obstructed by snow or ice. It would be left up all year round. And then as far as support, typically what we do is we include remote management and support. If we have to roll a truck, we would charge time and materials or a truck roll fee for that. But our first call would be to say, Scott at Department of Work, say, hey, we see that this is offline. Is your power out? Can you try to restart it? To eliminate, any additional cost or truck rolls from us.
Okay.
Right, it's a lot windier here than it is in Detroit.
Yeah. And then, I would want to know what the fire department thinks about this technology and, emergency services, sheriff's department, making sure this is something that they would recommend or, what their thoughts are on it. I love the idea that this could be installed in 30 days.
Yeah.
We could go on and have meetings and committees and, take a lot of time. This is something that could be up and running in 30 days and our beaches would be safer in 30 days. There's a lot of different ways we communicate with each other. It's hard to get a hold of your families when you're down there, just to say, hey, we're leaving the beach in 30 minutes. It would be immediate that we'd be able to, communicate with our families. And if the emergency aspect of it, that's the number one priority. And if that helps with that, I think that would be worth it. So any other questions or comments?
I disagree. I do agree with you, Mayor. And I get more and more excited when I think about the possibility of having webcams there. I think about the benefit to Superintendent Herbert's team to be able to look down a camera view at the parking lot to say, okay, the storm has blown a bunch of sand. We got to get out there and get the sand back to clean the parking lot. for Allegan County Sheriff to be like, okay, there's a pretty good crowd partying, tonight at the beach, for the sunset, we should probably make sure we've got a presence there. I can just see the possibilities of having line of sight to Oval Beach, just being really beneficial to staff and to first responders. I'm very excited about the possibility of piloting something like this over, in this case, a 3-year period. I think we'd learn a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've spent so much time with AT&T and we've heard it from our neighbors and even on social media. It's something that we've needed to address for a long time. And if this is an effective solution, I can really get behind it.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, to that point, Tyler, a couple questions. One is what measurements of success would you use to say, yes, the solution is meeting the expectations?
Yeah, so for me, like we did a big marina project here in southeastern Michigan, so I made the comment about like wind load and weather and what have you. And I get it wasn't on Lake Michigan, but we see a lot of adverse weather here. And the big metrics or KPIs that I would look to for success during the pilot would be like number of users measured that connect to the network over, say, a summer period, right, which is your high season. The other thing I would take a look at is total data usage as well as bandwidth used at any given time throughout the day. If you're seeing a high user count and number of people connecting to the network as well as using a lot of data, that to me would suggest that it's something that's utilized by the public, right? And that's a good thing. Those are kind of the big ones that come to mind. You get really crazy with it on the analytics of collecting email addresses if you wanted, but again, I don't think that's the intent here.
Thank
Lisa-
you. Sorry, I said another question. There's some screenshots in your presentation beginning on our page 31. Selected screenshots for CN Maestro X. Could you help me understand, is this what you monitor from a network standpoint, or is this something that you expect the city to monitor, or is this, can you help me help us understand what this is?
Yeah, of course. These are just the Wi-Fi hardware itself comes with a number of like what I call like enterprise grade controller and management. Your IT team has the right but not the responsibility to also have access to this and co-manage it with us. Again, we take care of all that for you. So if we ever see an alert or an issue or a power outage or whatever it may be, we'll contact you and take care of that on your behalf. But this is all just to show you that this isn't residential gear we're talking about. This is commercial enterprise gear that we can keep an eye on how many people are connecting at one time, the bandwidth usage, the signal levels, all those types of metrics that kind of inform if this has been, something that the public really, utilizes.
So is that an expectation that, again, we don't have an IT department, we have an IT contractor, unless someone wants to pick it up from a city standpoint. The city staff want to be monitoring the network usage. So in a typical client install, do you have a team that's at the client that actually monitors this along with you? You said co-manage it, or what's the expectation here?
Yeah, I guess what I'm trying to suggest is there are some clients we work with that get really scared that we hold our keys to the close to the chest and that we're not going to share the data. We're happy to share all the data with you, but there's no expectation or responsibility on your behalf to manage this system. The only thing we might ever ask you to do is if we sense an issue, we would call whoever the primary contact would be and say, hey, can you reboot this on your end and confirm, is there snow or a bird sitting on something or whatever it may be. But from an IT perspective, there's no expectation that you guys touch anything.
Thank you.
Okay. Lisa, I didn't know if you wanted to come up and speak about what your board thought of this and what discussions you've had.
Hello, is it on? Yeah, the board has been considering destination development opportunities since receiving a grant from the Michigan Association of CVBs. So we were blessed. In fact, every single CVB in the state received some money, which was great. This was a result of COVID. So the board formed a subcommittee and they've been looking at different opportunities for destination development. When Ryan and I started talking about the possibility of Wi-Fi at Oval Beach, I thought this was one perfect idea. So it is being considered along with other ideas, but this is one that I'm 95% sure the board's going to say yes to this. And our next board meeting is next Thursday, the 15th.
Okay. Okay, so we won't know until Thursday whether the CVB would be willing to kick in the $15,000 for the equipment. So that might be something that, what is council's thoughts on going ahead with this, not having that bit of information?
I personally think it's a viable solution. Again, I'm going to come back to what I said earlier, is I'd like to see some other alternatives to the problem and to make a better informed decision. This is, in my opinion, one alternative. The one that I suggested in terms of putting the line down the beach is another alternative, and there may be others that I'm not even aware of. So,
Lisa, thank you. Thank you.
yeah, thanks, Lisa.
I would be willing to have the, or if we vote on it on Monday, say subject to funding from the CVB on infrastructure. And then if we don't get that for some reason, then we can always come back to it and say, do we want to kick in the $15,000? That's what I would recommend as a viable solution.
I agree
Okay.
with Ellen. Yeah, I would be willing to vote yes, and, with the condition of the support with the CVB. I think it'd be a great collaboration, community collaboration project. Real quick, if you don't mind, yeah, if I could be hypothetical, if something happened and maybe we were out of service for like 3 or 4 days, would we get a reimbursement?
Yeah,
on our
that's like
monthly-
and that's typical with commercial providers. There's a process for that. Yes, we would issue a credit, and it's like I believe the way it works is like fortunately we don't run into this often, but it's like a pro rata of the downtime to what you're, the month and the service credit there.
I was just thinking theoretically, it gets pretty icy and wintry out there on Lake Michigan in the winter, if you don't know. And I was just thinking if it was down for even, a month for some reason, we would get that reimbursement. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Madam
Yeah,
Mayor, the other contingency would have to be a review of the contract, the proposed agreement.
Of course.
Yeah, so, I haven't sent it to, it was in our packet today, but I haven't asked Mr. Whitty or Chris Patterson to look at it yet, because I didn't know what your thoughts would be, so I didn't want to spend the legal time on that yet. But yeah, we'll ask them, well, he's here today to hear you. If you could start looking at some of those conditions. I think, one piece, if we absolutely hate this product and cancel, I think the way the agreement's currently written is that we essentially would have to pay for, 75% of the cost in a buyout. So, we'd get some money back, but there's that piece is in there. And just if I could, Madam Mayor, too, as far as alternatives. So, when I first started here, we did look at, there was a product being demoed that yes, are these, towers that the Grand Haven State Park has since installed, that is exactly that. They have different options. Some of them are hardwired, some of them are wireless. In fact, Lisa, when they were installed at Grand Haven State Park, initially sent me a photo of them and asked if it was something that the city, had evaluated or was looking into. So, they're a great product. They do have a pretty substantial impact from an aesthetic standpoint, and do kind of change the look and feel of your beach. So that's definitely an important probably policy consideration for you if that's something that you want us to also explore that as well. They're kind of in that first phase of their rollout, and I'm kind of curious to see how it goes with the Grand Haven State Park, frankly, with this current model that they have. I think that there's some feedback that we had given them during their demo that they didn't really incorporate because they were just kind of at the point where they were ready to kind of roll out the first design. And I'd like to see some improvements with that design before we would explore something like that, particularly lighting. And really how prominent that is and what it was intended to do. But there's some great functionality there too, with, our staff would be able to put out emergency messaging really quick through those. They have loud enough systems to provide warnings that there's incoming, terrible weather. I mean, so there's a lot of, benefits to them, but I think I would suspect that the biggest concern that would come out of that would be, just the change in the look and feel of the beach with those.
So I have a question, and hopefully this, obviously this is Wi-Fi and there's many benefits to having Wi-Fi at the beach, but the bottom line if someone has a cell phone and they call 911, how does that work exactly to make sure that, our emergency personnel can be contacted immediately from someone's cell phone? Tyler?
Yeah, so that's like a critical question. So most but not all cell phones these days have ability for Wi-Fi calling. Now, of course, that user has to make sure Wi-Fi calling is set up on their device and it shares the location. And so there's like some gates there, right, to make sure that it goes through, but in concept, in theory, is that you know, if you have Wi-Fi calling enabled, you are able to make a dial and make a cell phone call, including to 911, you know, via the network, you know, but unfortunately, I can't promise that every user is going to have that set up, right? And that's where the crux of the issue is. Yeah, I fully understand what you're looking to do, and I think we alleviate a lot of that, but it's not something that we can guarantee, of course.
Okay, but some education would be, you know, a great way to get that out to the public as far as enabling that, or at least having staff have that enabled.
Yeah, that's kind of my concern. I know Wi-Fi calling is awesome, but it is a bit finicky. From my personal experience, and I'm consider myself like I know that you have to go into your phone and stuff and do all that, and so it's even then it's a little tough to use. I think this is an awesome thing to have out there. I don't consider it to be a 100% solve for the emergency services. I feel like a tandem solution with this plus the landlines would definitely be the most effective to making sure, especially, can you imagine having tried to fumble with your Wi-Fi settings when someone's like, you can't, I can't, I've been in car accidents before. It's hard to dial 911 period, like after an accident. So having the ability for someone to just pick up a receiver, I think is paramount as well. But yeah, two different kind of solutions, both I think would go a long ways towards making sure people are safe in an emergency.
Yep,
Good
I
point.
agree. Okay. Anyone have any other comments or questions?
I
All
have
right.
just a quick comment, real quick, sorry, and I'll drop off here. I know Ryan and Lisa, we had discussed like not just Oval Beach, but phase 2 potentially being the downtown city Wi-Fi. We can deploy a similar solution for the city if and when that becomes of interest to the downtown. And then further for the business district, you know, we are also interested in taking a look at how we could help the businesses get more reliable connectivity indoors, not just outdoors on the city. If and when those times and the needs arise, please consider us for those. We would love to partner with you guys for those.
All right, Tyler, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. All right, we'll move on to discussion item 6C, review of the draft of the short-term rental licensing ordinance. It's on page 40. Ryan, if you want to set us up.
Certainly, Madam Mayor. So as you all are certainly, well, maybe before we get started, it'd probably be good to revisit the conflicts piece. We probably still have an ongoing conflict in this case, and then probably should just address the question that's been raised if you would like, Madam Mayor.
Yeah, that's great.
So,
Yeah, I can
Thanks, Jake.
comment on that. First, I mean, to my understanding, you do still have a pending short-term rental license application. So for the reasons that we've discussed, I think at a couple meetings now, you would still have a disqualifying conflict of interest. As to the statements made about Mayor Stanton having property in the R2 district and that somehow constituting a conflict, I think that's really analogous to the analysis that we provided earlier about Mr. Gardner's interest in owning a short-term rental that would be subject to the cap. At the end of the day, everyone sitting at this table owns property that is either going to be within a cap district or outside of one. And there's been suggestions made that property values are going to be impacted one way or the other in these different zones. That is one of those, you know, indirect kind of tangential impacts that legally doesn't rise to a conflict of interest. So no concern there. And I mean, we've kind of talked this topic to death. So unless there are any questions, or if anyone has, you know, something new that they want to disclose or a change in circumstances, that's pretty much our position.
Yep.
I understand that because of the conflict of interest that Councilman White here cannot vote. But does that also mean he cannot carry on in the conversation?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. Michigan law is pretty clear as to that point.
Okay.
And I think there's an attorney general opinion on point, but the perspective is that even if he's not voting, once there is a disqualifying interest, then that person is prohibited from participating, because even if they're not voting and directly influencing the outcome of the decision, they could be doing so indirectly through engaging in deliberations on the topic.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Good.
Jake.
right. So just, by way of history, yeah, back on June 19th, the planning commission made a recommendation that council consider, providing some direction to implement a cap. That was discussed by you as a council, and ultimately you a 4-2 vote passed a motion to direct staff to prepare necessary ordinance amendments, resolution language, and a policy necessary to implement a cap on the total number of short-term rental licenses that may be issued in the cities, just the R1 districts. And then there was a number of kind of provisions there that the text amendments should include. And so we prepared some initial zoning text for the planning commission to take an initial look at, and then they ultimately set a public hearing on a text amendment related to short-term rental caps that will be heard here on August 15th. Concurrently, we recommended that you take an approach of putting into place both a short-term rental police powers ordinance and obviously a zoning text amendment. So at this point, the language related to those items are similar. Two notable changes from your motion that you passed that we want to make sure and point out and get some initial feedback or from you. And I say initial because the intent today is for you to have some initial discussion as a council in a work session format. And then based on your feedback, we can bring this to your next work session meeting, which will be after the planning commission's public hearing. You presumably will have a recommendation from them at that point where you'll be able to look at all of it, the zoning text amendment, the police powers ordinance, and all of this language again, and then have some further discussion and decide whether or not you're ready for a vote at that following regular meeting or not. So we're not intending for this to be on your agenda for a vote on Monday. So that's important to point out. So the drafts that are before you, we provided some recommended language as it related to accessory dwelling units and exempting them from the cap. We heard some concerns from folks that are occupying a single family dwelling and their interest in separately renting their ADUs, which there is a process, a zoning process right now where if they obtain special land use approval, they can do that. But if the cap were in effect, they wouldn't be able to obtain the short-term rental license. So that could, alleviate that concern. And then we also looked at just exempting ADUs altogether. So if you have a single family or license for a single family dwelling, and you have an ADU and want to also rent that, even though you have to obtain a short-term rental license for both, they still can only be rented under a single contract. And so we kind of took a look at, well, even if you add an ADU, right, and you don't have one that's existing now, is that really substantially different than maybe adding an addition onto your home and adding space that way, or adding additional living options? So again, this is just some language for you to consider. You can disagree with that. You can change that. That's totally within your purview. The exemption related to 560 Campbell is not included. We reviewed a prior consent judgment related to that property, and given the language in that consent judgment, we believe that property is already exempt from, at least would be exempt from license limits. Not that they would be exempt from obtaining a short-term rental license, but we think there's some language there that kind of already exempts them on that. So I'm gonna turn it over to you, Madam Mayor, for, the other piece I wanted to point out as well is that the maximum short-term rental limit, as the language is drafted, can be adjusted by a future council via resolution. That's not the only option. You could choose to simply require that it be, changed through a more formal ordinance amendment process, like you would most other ordinances. So that's also an option available to you as well. So hoping to at least get your feedback on the ADU item and whether you desire any changes as it relates to maximum limits, and then any other feedback that you might have and questions.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Gregory.
A bit curious, and maybe I've missed it somewhere in all of this. Do we have an official definition of what a residential unit is, or like a single family house? Are there criteria for that we have defined?
Yes. Yeah. So the Fuller short-term rental licensing ordinance mirrors the definition of a dwelling unit that's actually in the zoning ordinance that essentially, states that it has to have independent cooking and bathing facilities. And then there's certain living spaces that would be exempt. A motel is not considered a dwelling, a bed and breakfast is not considered a dwelling. A hotel is not considered a dwelling, a motor court's not considered a dwelling, but there is some language specific to that.
Because I know there are some rental houses here in the city and on the hill, and I'm thinking, and I know they're very small, and I think there's no way somebody would buy that to raise a family. Yeah.
So you know, in general, a single family home in the city can be quite small. You're looking at 600 square foot for a minimum. So if somebody wanted to, you know, purchase property and build a single family dwelling, they could make it as small as 600 square foot in the, per our
Should we-
zoning, so.
Should we have that defined here somewhere on this, or? Do
In
we
what
have
way?
that, do we have that in an ordinance, or do we have that somewhere in our charter, so that's defined? I mean, a single home dwelling, can't that be, couldn't we define that if we wanted to?
It's defined.
So it is, like I said, in the short-term rental license ordinance, our licensing ordinance, a dwelling is defined.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
It doesn't define the size of the dwelling that would be eligible for a short-term rental license, but
The
I mean,
size would be, I mean, that the minimum dwelling area for a dwelling unit will be something that's defined in the zoning ordinance. And then the short-term rental licensing ordinance requires that the dwelling unit being licensed complies with whatever relevant requirements there are in the zoning ordinance.
Okay.
So those are, you know, either incorporated there or just expressly included in the definition of a dwelling in the short-term rental licensing
and
ordinance.
something to think about too, you know, as we talk about accessory dwelling units, well, those can also be even smaller, right?
Sure.
And you can independently have a short-term rental license for an accessory dwelling unit if you have your special land use approval and you're owner occupying the home. So I think your concern is that there may be some homes that aren't like traditional single-family dwellings and they might be subject to a cap. And if they were to sell in the future, it wouldn't be like a traditional single-family home as some might expect. Is that?
Right.
In-
And I can think of a couple properties that I know myself, that I just think to myself, there's no way. I mean, even if it was a two-family, married couple and maybe one child, there's a lot of the units or houses that are like.
Wouldn't
plenty
it
of
just be like a
condos.
tiny house or a?
There's plenty of condos that have a short-term rental ban. There's one for sale right now that's about 600 square feet in a condominium association with a ban on
And
short-term rentals.
even if it was smaller than the city's minimum square footage requirements, it could still be used as a single family dwelling because it would be grandfathered in.
Okay.
So it might not be able to apply for a short-term rental license if it's subject to a cap, but that doesn't mean it couldn't be used.
I just want to make sure that that's clarified and that we have that clarified for folks. That's all.
Mm.
Mhm.
Okay. Any other, comments or?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, thanks for being here. I do want to ask a question about the attorney's comment, and I want to make sure, because I'm a little confused, where it says, as currently drafted, the zoning and police powers ordinance amendments are substantially identical. He called that into question as being non-compliant. And I'm not sure I understood the argument he's making. Can you
Yeah,
help me
I-
understand that?
To be honest, the concern that he's raising doesn't really make sense to me. I mean, there is overlap in these different provisions of the city code and the zoning ordinance. And just because you have regulations that are similar in one ordinance to another doesn't make it a de facto zoning ordinance. And with respect to the concern about, you can subject a zoning amendment to a referendum, but that isn't the case for just a police power ordinance like this. That's actually not true. The city charter establishes a process for any ordinance that the city adopts to be referended.
Okay. And the reason I ask the question is because I suspect that this is going to be probably litigated at some point, I imagine, just based on what I've been hearing from people and comments I've heard. Two is, so the original motion that exempted 560 Campbell was incorrect because it's included in a prior consent judgment. So that's being removed, right?
I wouldn't say that motion was incorrect, but that was just kind of the starting point that staff
Okay.
used to bring this to your attention. And yeah, further reviewing that issue, the consent judgment, we kind of landed on that conclusion that it probably wouldn't be subject to the caps anyways.
Okay. And then the first bullet point, I'm pleased that that has been changed because I know we received several correspondences from people in town that had asked about that question. So I'm very happy to see that the planning commission has responded to those public comments.
Are you referring to
The
the
ADUs.
ADUs there? Yeah, that isn't so much direction from the planning commission as it was something that wasn't addressed in council's initial motion. And then it's something that on a staff level, we discussed. And the option we're presenting to you, I think it's a policy decision one way or another.
Yeah.
the option we're presenting is to exempt all ADUs from the licensing cap, but again, that was something that wasn't addressed in the original motion. So if there's additional, discussion or thoughts on that, we welcome them at this time.
Yeah, my thoughts on the accessory dwelling units is, we did get a lot of, correspondence about that. Just because it's somebody that's staying in their home and, they have, someone in their backyard, they would be in charge of, if there was noise or any issues and that sort of thing. Plus there's, they have to apply for a special land use to be able to have that. So there's extra scrutiny on that to be able to say, hey, maybe your neighbors don't want that, or maybe there's no parking, or maybe there's varying things that might, they have to go through an extra set of scrutiny as far as that's concerned. But I liked the idea of it not being part of the cap, and also, just having more freedom when it comes to an accessory dwelling unit in our city. I think we have a ton of them. A lot of people have apartments over their garages and varying things, whether it was to pay their taxes or to have extra space for relatives when they come to stay, or to rent it out, to make the extra money and have, visitors be able to use that space. I like the idea of it not being involved in the cap.
And
I do too. I have to
Ryan-
say that, I also agree with that, and because, I thought 20% was a little steep. I think that's kind of like
A compromise.
something that's gonna help out with folks that want to stay here in town.
And I did just want to make it clear, I think Ryan mentioned it earlier, but the proposed language here, it doesn't just exempt accessory dwelling units that are attached or I guess associated with an owner occupied dwelling. It's all accessory dwelling units in the city.
Yeah, additional question. So for the meeting on the 15th, which is going to be very interesting, be curious to see kind of what the public is responding to, some of the changes that have been made. Is there any thought about maybe moving that event to a larger space? I know last time this room was just jam-packed, and I'm just wondering if there might be a thought about moving it to a place that's a little bigger so people can feel a little more comfortable. Just a suggestion. Two is, and I brought this up before, is how are we communicating to every individual certificate owner in the city of a short-term rental about this change that's being proposed, as well as a public meeting next week?
So, yeah, a couple layers. So we haven't looked at a bigger space for the public hearing. I
Just
think-
a suggestion.
Yeah, no, and I hear you. And, obviously this room was packed. I think that's probably the most people that you're going to see are probably that day that you had that decision. In this case, we've already put out notice, in the newspaper that, we're having this public hearing, and the location as well has already been published. So that meets the, zoning enabling act requirement. We'll certainly, when the packet's ready at the end of, Friday, we'll be, putting that out via the news you can use. We haven't taken an approach of identifying, specific property owners. I think, we have to be careful with that and not wanting to only do that for certain issues and not other issues, and have somebody say, well, how come you weren't notifying me about this change or that change, or, so, I think we try to do a good job of making sure information is available. I'll tell you, a lot of people know about this. I know a lot of the rental agents have been notifying folks, because I have a lot of people coming and saying, hey, my agent said this. I have some questions about this. Will you please answer my question? So I've had a ton of questions on this. I think folks know, which is good. That's what we want, right? I mean, we want folks to know and be aware and participate in the process. But I don't know that we're gonna do a specific notice to just certain groups.
Yeah, and thank you for answering the question. I still am of the opinion that there should be a specific mailing to certificate owners to notify them, because there's a lot of as you said, there's realtors that are telling people things, and just community comments on Facebook, et cetera. A lot of misinformation out there. And I think the city does have the responsibility in certain situations, this being one of them, of just critical importance, that the citizens that are impacted understand exactly what's going to be taking place and what's being proposed. I mean, in my mind, $1,000 to put a letter together to send out to the holders of the certificates would totally make sense. And I just think make sure that we cover all the bases. I just don't want to be in a situation again where we have someone that shows up and says, no one ever even told me about this. Because despite our best efforts, and again, short of going out and knocking at everybody's door, I just think this is one of those situations I just think we have to just go the extra mile.
Yeah. I just, we just have to be careful. Like if we were to just send it to certificate holders, like you have other property owners that say, well, how come you didn't notify me? And I'm not a certificate holder, but maybe I had an interest someday. And so I do think, I have thought through, if this change is made, one of my, larger concerns here is that sometimes folks aren't always paying attention to the dates that their things expire. And, if your certificate expires and you're past that period, then, you're not gonna be able to apply for that license, right? And so folks need to really, we do have obviously emails for a lot of agents and owners and, if there's a change, we still need to build out our section of our website related to short-term rentals, but I think, we certainly can do an email specific to short-term rental owners and agents to let them know, hey, this, if a change is made, make sure that you're paying attention to these dates and this process, because we don't want you to be in a position where you're losing out on eligibility to apply later if there's a cap in place.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Okay, thanks, Jake.
Thank you, Jake.
Okay. We will move on then to items 6D, Shoreline Technology Solutions Managed Service Provider Agreement. It's on page 51. Ryan.
Yeah, so the last 3-year agreement with Shoreline Technology Solutions is up. They've been the city's IT provider for many, many years, and we were, I think, their first, one of their first, if not their first customers. So some kind of key highlights from the last agreement. This agreement, instead of 3 years, would be 2 years, but it also would lock in the same price for 2 years, whereas the previous agreement had some increases each year. This gives us the same pricing for both years. This ultimately is an increase of $10 per user per month for the essential user support plan. We have 9 of those users currently. And then the probably, more substantial ongoing cost here is adding on an advanced security plan at $35 per user per month. This relates to some changes in their pricing and model, where some of the items that we have now that they've kind of provided really at no cost to us are items that are really in their basic plan. And if we don't pay for those additional items, they're going to kind of drop those pieces out. So some of that includes really protecting the system from unauthorized downloads, but really would this bring some ongoing security awareness training for staff, ongoing security assessments, and some enhanced security features to kind of warn everyone if there's certain emails that you be leery of. There might be some 2-factor authentication pieces that are implemented, some things that a lot of organizations have frankly, implemented. This is the world that unfortunately that we're living in now. So I think it's dollars that are definitely, wise to spend, but it does come at an increased cost. So, overall, we're going to looking at spending a little under $5,000 extra per year. Then as a separate one-time project, the one of the products that supports our internal server here isn't going to be supported going forward. And so they're recommending that we kind of switch over to Microsoft so that would be ongoing updates and we keep that up to speed, but there's some costs in turning everything over. So.
Okay. Any comments or questions?
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, Gregory.
It says ongoing security assessments as that add-on, that's adding on that advanced security plan. Have we not had security assessments before?
So some of this is like extra level, my understanding at least an extra level of
Right.
testing that they would be doing that is not currently part of like.
Oh,
yep.
So the answer is they haven't done security assessments in the past because we haven't paid for this program.
I don't think not in maybe the same way. I think that they've certainly, assess things to say, okay, are we patched well, or is everybody downloading the updates that we need to update? And, some of those things that like kind of harden our system and the basics, but I think this is going to be some extra.
Yeah.
I'm not an IT guy, so I don't know, maybe I have all the language, but.
I'm not either, but
I can certainly ask more
I
specifics if you
understand
want.
The importance of getting a security assessment in a program.
If you want more specifics, I can definitely ask them what more that would include versus what was before. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, the third bullet says advanced security plan. So it sounds like it's, additive to what security was already in place. So,
Additional security.
yeah, that's my take on it. Yeah.
I'm not nitpicking. I'm just
Yeah.
curious.
Yep, good questions.
Oh, yeah, and then there's the security awareness training for staff. I mean, I know we've all seen, the mayor ask us for our credit card details and
Right.
like, so. yeah.
Right.
Right.
So I think.
I need
you
Apple
know,
gift cards from my PPW committee, just so you guys know, and I am accepting those.
I mean, the training for human error is a huge part of this.
Right.
That is one of the key vulnerabilities. And then the more we can have all of us trained, the better. Because, that is an area of exploitation is, the human factor is like, Scott, it's Lauren, I need your credit card details.
Right.
Yeah, that kind of thing.
Yep. All right. Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, Mayor Stanton, thank you. My very first question is, city staff, how do you feel about this company? Have they been a good provider? Have they been responsive? I've worked with them a bit in terms of just getting my account set up, but just I want to see what the on the ground experience is.
Very quick, responsive, great work. If we put a ticket in, their response time is excellent.
Yeah.
So I'm very happy with them.
So they actually have a ticketing system that you can,
Mhm.
excellent. The other question is regarding the cost. So it's $10 additional, an increase of $10 per user per month, and then the added security plan. So I'll deal with the first one. How many users per month do we have? I mean, is
9.
that?
It's our core, system
9.
users, 9.
Okay,
Yep.
sorry. So it'd be 90. So it's well, no. What's our current rate?
$45.
So it'll
a
be going
month.
up to 55, so times 9 times 12, so that's your annual cost. So the additional advanced security plan would be a $35 each user on top of that.
Right.
So the question then becomes, what's the risk of not doing that? I mean, we currently probably have some security. I mean, there's basic security included in all of these systems, but and not to say that I should nitpick the price, but really what is going to be the additional security and the risk that, and again, I work in an environment that's so darn locked down. It's amazing how much security impacts what we do. But, thinking about things about being able to, plug a thumb drive into your computer or, just being hacked from the outside. I mean, that would be, I'm just wondering exactly what the advanced security would be. If we didn't get it, what the risk would be.
So one of the big products is, software that essentially locks things down. So, we're like staff can't just, download any new programs, things like that, to where, we might be introducing something into the system that shouldn't be there without their knowledge. So even like updates, like and we have this in place now, but this is something that's not included in the basic plan anymore for that we have going forward, at least at no cost. So if they take that off, we're even with our BSNA updates, our system updates with the systems that we use for taxes and cash receipting and everything, we can't even update those systems without going to our IT to say, hey, can you lift this so we can pull these through and then put it back in place. So just with the emails, obviously that we get, obviously there's some scanning but you can get some malicious things that come through. But then just, inadvertently downloading something that we didn't realize was going to be an issue from somewhere. And I think that's a huge piece of it, at least that they explained to me.
Right, you thought you were opening up a video of dancing kitties, but.
I know, yeah. Or, bubble fun at the park or something like that, right?
Yeah, I was curious too, as to, exactly what do you get more for that? I don't know a lot about IT, but we have a great IT department at the station. And of course, we also have protective software at the flower shop because we have credit card information and all of that we have. So I was just curious as to exactly what all that was, so.
Yeah, I mean, the threat is growing, not decreasing.
Right.
So, I think this is cheap insurance,
Yes,
frankly.
agreed, especially, people pay their property bills with credit. There's all kinds of credit card information on there, legal opinions that are on there and privilege. The idea that we would abandon anything like that, that's so sensitive for $35 a month is just not something I'd be willing to support. This is something we need.
Anyone else?
Yeah, additional question. Thank you. So are they actually the host for our website as well? They have responsibility for that?
No.
That's hosted. Okay. Is that remote hosted or is that hosted on site? Do we have a server here downstairs that?
So we have a server here, but that's the internet, the website's all web-based, right? So.
Okay. Yeah, because that's something that's been, I think, on the, at least on my mind is, I really think, and you kind of alluded to it, I think our website could really use some help. I think it's not as advanced as I see some other communities. There's a cost involved in doing that and a project around that, but I'd really love to see us put that on our strategic planning to enhance our availability and use of our website, because it's, if you compare us to other folks, not to say it's a bad thing, and I know exactly who
Yep.
built our website, but things have progressed so far beyond that today that I think it's worth looking at.
Absolutely. I
I think-
agree.
Absolutely agree. We do need
That's not, yeah, that's not a criticism of the person or people that developed the current website. It's just that we've grown
That
beyond
marches
that.
on and you
Yeah.
get better product, yeah.
Right, correct. I agree.
Staff definitely agrees. We've talked about it internally that there's a need and, we even want to, I think, start offering some online payment options. There's a lot of,
Mhm.
in fact, I have a lot of website people constantly that reach out to.
Oh, yeah.
me.
Right.
But
It's,
yeah.
and as
Maybe
as a
we'll
ma-
have a webcam for Oval Beach.
Right.
and as a matter of fact, Granicus, they've got their hands in just all kinds of stuff.
Mhm.
Granicus actually has an annual award that they give out to municipalities for best website, I think, and there's some other awards that they give out, and they constantly send me solicitations about, going to webinar and so forth. That even might be something that we say as a community, that might be a strategy, is that in order to get more visibility, we're going to do this and maybe we can even win an award. I mean, that would be a nice little thing to put on our city resume.
I'm looking at the Saugatuck Township website.
Oh,
and
yeah, it's great.
Absolutely
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
They've done a great job with it.
Yeah.
As well as the CVB website too.
Yeah.
And you go to our website, and again, not saying anything, at the time it was a great
Right,
product.
Right.
But you go to our website, it's like, oh, it's 2004.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think for sure.
Step back
I
in
think
time.
Universally.
Yeah,
All right.
step back in time, right?
All right, is there anything else? All right, we'll move on then to item 6E, special event request. Duneville Press Conference and Legislative Tour. It's on page 58, Ryan.
Yeah, this is, a little bit of a late request, but perhaps something that the council may be willing to still accommodate. So my understanding is Representative Hood has a bill that she's looking to introduce that would potentially offer some greater like dune protections. And so the Saugatuck Dunes Coastal Alliance, kind of, recommended to her that maybe she consider an introduction of the bill at Oval Beach, and they reached out to see if that was a possibility. And essentially explain to them that I think we could probably make it happen, but certainly would need your approval. So kind of being the back lot at Oval Beach, so not quite out on the beach itself. The fire chief's aware and said that he can accommodate inspecting the tents and help them out with a couple of additional items that they would need to make sure they have compliant tents out there as well. But happy to take any questions that you have back to the applicants before I vote on Monday.
Yeah, Jamie pulled it up so you can see exactly where they would like to set up for this event. It's not the main parking lot, but it's the additional parking, and then it's way in the back there. It is 10:30 to 12:30, so hopefully, it would be a little bit earlier in the day before things got really packed, but it's up for discussion. What are your thoughts?
Well, the applicant is the Michigan Environmental Council. They're a 501c3 nonprofit, so, you always, want to be sort of careful during an election year. People start using, your agency, your city, whatever, for, campaign purposes. It just happens.
I wondered that, so.
But MEC it's been a 501c3 since 1980. I have no concerns.
Okay.
It's on a Monday, right? The
It's a
21st.
Wednesday.
21st is a Wednesday, I believe.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Today's Wednesday. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, the only thing that I actually had to look up Rachel Hood. I didn't know who she was. She's the 81st district, which is Kent County. So it's kind of interesting in how it's just another further statement about our beautiful beach here, right in our Lakeshore community, that the 81st district is actually looking to use our beach for this event. So I wonder if our district representative or state representative might be interested in this as well. So.
Yeah, I think this is great publicity for us. Obviously it would be a press event that I think a lot of people would cover. So I think it would be nice publicity for us.
Tucked back there, it's not invasive back there.
Yeah.
Wednesdays are I don't know how this time of year they're starting to slow down the middle of the week, because that's when people are making that transition of coming in for the weekend or leaving for the weekend. So I think Wednesday's an ideal day, and that's tucked back there where it's really not interfering with beach goers or people parking, so.
And we accommodate other nonprofits. I know Rotary obviously does the Mount Bald Head Challenge, we start out of there, so I don't see any reason not to accommodate them if it makes sense and we're not gonna be off-putting to our guests, which I think that time of the day and that on Wednesday, I have no problems with it.
Okay.
The other question I have is in regards to any commitment that the DPW may have with this event. Didn't see anything in here that looked to be of great concern, but has this been discussed with Mr. Herbert, just to make sure that?
Yeah, Scott was on the
It's not
initial
safety meeting,
emails,
too.
but I know Jamie will, you approve on Monday, work to set up a quick meeting, just make sure everybody's on the same page.
Yeah, and the contingencies for the safety meeting with the DPW and that too, Russ.
Yeah,
Will there be-
my question is more along exactly what they would need from the city from a DPW standpoint.
Yeah, so I don't know that they're gonna need a ton from
Okay.
us. I know David had talked with Scott before even submitting the even initial ask to
David
me.
Swan?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Will
I
there
think
be
Scott had
snacks?
actually kind of identified this potential location for them or something, so.
What'd you say?
Will there be snacks?
Well, I'm sure refreshments will be served.
Yeah, I think, like, we've supported all of our, and it sounds like a
Mhm.
Okay.
great way to engage the community.
All right. Anything else? Nope. Okay. All right. We'll move on to public comment on anything you'd like to speak on. Anyone in the audience wish to come to the podium? Okay. Anyone online? I see a hand raised. And we will unmute you. And if you could state your name and where you live, and feel free to unmute yourself, and we'd love to hear from you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. My name's Paul Whitfield. I live at 450 Spear Street. My wife and I own the Book Nook in downtown. I've been attending as many city meetings as possible over the last couple months, always online. And I want to thank you for all the hard work on the short-term rental situation. And thank you for listening to the community input in adding the ADU language. But one thing I want to point out that your legal representative just brought up, and I checked in the wording, on page 41 of the summary report, it talks about all ADUs that are owner occupied. But on page 44, in the actual text, it just says all ADUs. And I think the intent originally was for owner occupied or principal residence, because you get a win-win situation with the resident there, and they get neighbors, the neighbors get neighbors, and the town gets business from people that are visiting town. So you may want to take a look at that, unless there's something in the special land use permit that requires it to be owner occupied. I think that should be something that's looked at. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Paul.
Anyone else online who wishes to speak? I don't see anyone else. Jamie? Okay, so we can, I don't know, did we have any correspondence? I didn't see any included. They will be in
Before this
Mondays.
packet came out, there's some that you'll have for Monday. I understand.
Okay. And so we can move on to council comments. We can start with Russ this time.
Thank you. I just would, there's a letter in the paper today around the beach road closure impacts felt. And I had actually emailed the city manager last week about the communication that went out. What I'm hearing pretty consistently is that there's some misinformation about who's actually responsible for the road closure. It's actually the city of Douglas, and it's not within the city jurisdiction. However, the impact of closing that road has a far bigger impact on the citizens and visitors to Saugatuck than it does Douglas because of its location. So I'm just more putting this out there that my expectation is that we have regular conversations with the manager over in Douglas so we can communicate to our citizens in any form and fashion possible about what this might look like. I mean, right now, there's a lot of unanswered questions about the length of the closure. But, I think this is a situation which was a very late decision. And of course, we're at the table, but we're not the decision makers. I really think it's an opportunity for us to kind of take a step back for a moment and say, okay, is there anything we could have done differently to communicate to our citizens and visitors, signage and so forth, to work with the city of Douglas as this closure happens? And the duration of it's going to be, we don't know yet. So, and some of the concerns are in the letter, but also I've heard from people who have stopped me on the street and have asked questions about it. So it's a big issue.
Yeah, and maybe it's because it's timely. I normally don't. If you want, I can comment on a couple of things or give you what updates I have, I guess.
Yeah, please.
I mean, the short update, is that Douglas has been communicating to the extent that they can. I think there's probably some room for improvement, certainly. But we all have, they invited all of us to a meeting tomorrow to hopefully give a more comprehensive update. They've
Great.
been hard at work trying to, evaluate things. They first realized that this might be a possibility. I mean, we all, Daniel, me, I invited somebody from our engineering staff that was available, the sheriff's office, fire department, we all hopped on a call and afterwards I talked with the CVB about what can we do to make sure and let folks know that certain amenities are still open. Douglas was willing to send out a letter to all of our residents on that side of town. So I provided a list of owner addresses. So it's not, just going to the mailing address on that side of town, their actual mailing address that they have on file with the city. And so that letter was sent, was my understanding, to all of those folks. We did social media messaging, we did it through our email blasts. I don't know if the signage has been installed yet as it relates to like Oval Beach and things like that, but that's coming. The CBB actually was a great partner on that, designing that and sending out designs. Douglas is paying for it, knowing that there's a lot of things on the west side of town. I know it's impactful. It's not an ideal situation as it relates to public safety. As it stands right now, public safety vehicles are still able to pass through there in case of an emergency. So they do have the permission to move the barricades and do what they need to do. So that way we still have the same response times. Douglas is also aware of the fire department's concerns related to the narrowness of Lakeshore and getting fire trucks through there. In fact, they shared a video of that as Douglas was at their special council meeting as they were considering it, to kind of show them the challenges. So they've asked Douglas if they have to do a longer term closure and shut down one side of the road or the other, that they look at bridge options. Certainly that come with some costs, but it would still at least allow emergency responders to get through on a more quickly. So, every day, I think we've had communication and tried to be on top of this and think through, as many scenarios as we can. But if there's additional suggestions, we are all ears, and I know this is impactful and not ideal, so.
Yeah, and just wanted for my friends in Douglas, this was not a criticism of their decision to close the road. That's ultimately their decision to make. I would say that we want to, and the other thing I've heard from people is that there doesn't seem to be, at least the impression, that there's a lot of cooperation going on between, the city and the city of Douglas and others impacted. So whatever we can do to kind of maybe make sure that people know that there's like a meeting tomorrow with the city of Douglas, ways in which we can just let people know that we are communicating and we are collaborating, that we can. Ultimately, it's the city of Douglas's responsibility, but whatever we can offer to help move this process through to a conclusion, I think would be beneficial.
Hey, Helen?
Yeah, I would echo those comments, especially as a resident of River West. One of the things that I think that it's actually going to be on Douglas to do, since it is their property, Lakeshore is way too clogged, and there needs to be better enforcement of people parking on the side of the road, landscape vehicles. The days when there's trash out there, if there's people leaving their trash bins out, then people just cannot get around. So I think that it's really needs to be on Douglas, and to the extent, again, the communication that goes back and forth. Lakeshore is impassable. It isn't. So I want to be clear about this. This is not like how when we had the roundabout traffic and it went up and down Maple. Maple is legitimately a 2-lane street. Lakeshore is not a 2-lane street, and it's not built to accommodate this. And it's also our only way back and forth to that area. Maple, you had options. You could take Holland. You didn't have to go up and down that. So there's no other option, and it needs to be tightened up a lot more than it is. I know that there's a first stab at it or whatever. It's been insufficient. And so I would encourage us to work with them on that.
Okay, Scott?
I'll pick up on this point as well. Once again, this is not a criticism of our neighbors or anyone in the tri-community area, but I do think the point is very well taken that this impacts Saugatuck tremendously with basically one solid month of our beach season, our best part of our beach season left. I don't think would be disrespectful or inappropriate for us to escalate this as a city with Representative Andrews, because I think there is a solution. Frankly, I mean, if you get the right people in the state involved, you could have a National Guard engineer unit put in a bridge that tanks are capable of using. That's what they do. They bring in special equipment, they drop a bridge, so armored vehicles can cross an area where that was previously impassable. So I'm not sure all of the solutions have been explored. And that's no criticism, because it takes a lot of people to brainstorm a lot of ideas. But, I think taking this move, and I understand the public safety priority, doing this before Labor Day, I think, is very problematic for Saugatuck. And I think we should escalate it and use, frankly, all the resources that we have at a state level to get this sorted. And we might find some help from our friends in Lansing. So I agree with that. More importantly, though, I'm glad that Councilman Gardner brought it up. I really want to thank our clerk and her team for the election, the primary election. You guys did a great job, as usual. And once again, thanks for providing a safe, secure election. So thank you, Jamie.
Okay, Gregory?
I wanted to thank also for a great job with the election. You've done a great job putting this place back together, and it looked like nothing happened. Really. I'm sure you were moving desks along with everybody else, moving furniture, helping you out. I appreciate that. I also want to say to Ryan, we talk about communication, and I talk about on the show a lot about, you want to find out what's going on in your city, sign up for those emails. And within the last week, I really appreciate getting 2 reports on Ferry Street that were emailed to all folks that are subscribing. Hopefully, I check sometimes, but hopefully you're kind of mirroring a lot of that on our Facebook. We don't have a huge following there, but and then also for the transformer that blew out. It's those kinds of things that make me feel that I know that you're paying attention to what's going outside these walls, and I appreciate that. And then finally, Music in the Park tonight with Jake Stevens between 7 and 9 p.m. brought to you by the CVB and sponsored by Mill Pond Realty. And let's say a little prayer for Pizza Quest Chewy. They are the sponsor tonight as well. The owner of the new restaurant pizzeria that opened up in Fenville. Unfortunately, he had an accident and he is recovering right now. And the family is trying to put the pieces back together in their home and their business. I know that there's a GoFundMe page. So if anybody feels inclined to support them with either a prayer or a donation, please do that.
Okay. Logan?
I would like to acknowledge the sacrifice that Ryan Cummins has made to be our city manager.
Yes.
If I'm not wrong, I think you resigned your position this week. Is that what it was?
Right.
That's a big deal. I know that you're very ingrained in the community in Grand Haven and you've served them well. And yeah, I don't have a particularly poignant thought on that, just recognizing that's a big deal. And we're lucky to have you here, and I appreciate the sacrifice there. It's a lot.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank
you. Yeah.
It's a big deal.
Yeah, it was a nice interview on WZZM to see you on there. And, absolutely, I agree with you. It was a lot for you to give up, and I know how passionate you were about it. And we just appreciate you dedicating your time to Saugatuck. And I'm sure you'll still be involved in many ways in your community as well, because you can't help yourself. Yes. And as far as communication, I agree as much as we can communicate, it's terrible that this time of year that we are facing the road closure. Lakeshore Drive is scary right now, and it's a critical dune, having that kind of traffic. out there, it makes me nervous. You know, we've seen things happen and I just don't like to have that kind of traffic on there in the amount of volume that we're having right now. So I agree with Scott, to be able to reach out to other resources to see if we can get people off that road, you know, and have that kind of traffic. It's not a great detour at all. Just on a lighter note, I had an opportunity to perform my first wedding as the mayor of Saugatuck. And it was wonderful that they're from the east side of the state and they chose to get married here. And it was a real honor to be able to do that. That's something you do as the mayor. And it was fantastic that they chose to get married in Saugatuck. And Helen had suggested doing it in the Rose Garden instead of right here in City Hall. And they loved it and they thought it was wonderful. So, yeah, on that note, if I could have a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Also,
All right, all those in favor say yes?
Yes.
All right, adjourn.
Yeah, I had to ask you about that. I'm glad. Well.